The royal households of the King and Prince Harry have been having a little chit-chat, possibly about how to heal.
Prince Harry's relationship with the royal family has long been a subject of public fascination, but the latest development has propelled that fascination into uncharted territory. According to widely reported claims, Prince Harry has now severed all ties with King Charles following a shocking DNA revelation that has allegedly called his true paternity into question. This moment, more than any before, marks a definitive rupture between the Duke of Sussex and the House of Windsor, one that carries consequences not only for the personal dynamics within the family, but for the legacy, image, and structure of the monarchy itself. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The severing of ties did not happen in a vacuum. For years, the rift between Prince Harry and his royal relatives has widened through public disagreements, candid interviews, and a shared narrative of emotional distance and institutional rigidity. What began as a gradual distancing evolved into something unignorable: physical relocation to the United States, relinquishing royal duties, and openly challenging the institution's treatment of both Harry and his wife, Meghan Markle. Yet despite all of that, the familial connection, however frayed, remained technically intact. The bloodline, after all, was assumed to be unbreakable. That assumption has now been thrust into deep uncertainty. Reports suggest that Prince Harry received definitive results from a DNA test indicating that King Charles may not be his biological father. While speculation about Harry's parentage has floated in the background of tabloid chatter for decades, mostly dismissed as salacious gossip, this new development has allegedly given that speculation a disturbing validity. The implications of such a revelation are monumental, not just emotionally but constitutionally, culturally, and symbolically. The emotional impact of discovering or confirming that one's parent is not biologically related is profound in any circumstance. For Prince Harry, the revelation would strike at the very heart of his identity, destabilizing everything he believed about his origin, his place in the royal lineage, and his relationship with the man he had called father for his entire life. Such a truth, arriving after a lifetime spent in the most public of families and the most scrutinized of roles, carries a weight that words can barely contain. Prince Harry's decision to cut all ties with King Charles is both reactionary and transformative. It represents a break not only with an individual, but with an entire identity that has been shaped in part by royal tradition and dynastic inheritance. If Harry no longer believes he is truly of Windsor blood, then the symbolic threads that bind him to the crown are effectively cut. It is no longer a question of stepping back from royal duties, it is a matter of complete disassociation. The act of cutting ties under such circumstances suggests more than just personal betrayal. It signals a rejection of a system that has, from Harry's perspective, either deceived him or knowingly upheld a lie. The sense of betrayal would be almost unfathomable. Imagine living one's life under the global microscope, performing duties and adhering to protocols that hinge on bloodline legitimacy, only to discover that such legitimacy might be a falsehood. For someone like Harry, who has spoken extensively about trauma, mental health, and the emotional consequences of royal life, this revelation would represent the ultimate rupture, not just between father and son, but between the individual and the institution. Publicly, the decision to sever ties will be interpreted through countless lenses. To some, it may appear as another dramatic step by the Duke of Sussex, a continuation of a pattern of rebellion. To others, it may represent a deeply personal act of liberation, a shedding of illusion, a reclaiming of truth, no matter how painful. But for the monarchy, it places a spotlight on the fragility of perception. The entire foundation of royal legitimacy is built on heritage, bloodlines, and succession. Any disruption to that narrative introduces instability, both symbolic and practical. Moreover, this revelation, if proven true, could retroactively change how the public views Harry's past. His upbringing, his treatment by the royal establishment, and his eventual departure from formal duties could all take on new meaning when refracted through the lens of illegitimacy. His feelings of alienation, previously interpreted as a rebellion against an outdated system, might now be understood as an unconscious response to something far more existential. It could explain, to some degree, his persistent discomfort within the royal fold, a sense of not belonging that may have deeper roots than previously thought. The identity of Harry's alleged biological father has not been officially confirmed, but speculation is rife. Theories abound, many pointing to individuals from Princess Diana's past. But the specifics of paternity, while undeniably sensational, are less important than the emotional and symbolic consequences. What matters is not simply who the biological father is, but what this revelation means for Harry, for the institution he has left behind, and for the future of the monarchy's public image. It's also essential to consider the timing. Prince Harry, now a father himself, has spoken often about the kind of parent he wants to be, one who nurtures truth, emotional openness, and safety. Receiving such a revelation as an adult and as a parent likely sharpened his reaction. A man who now defines much of his identity through his role as a father would be especially sensitive to questions of paternal honesty and integrity. If he believes that he was denied the truth about his own origins, then cutting off the man who represented that lie may feel not only justified, but necessary for his own sense of self. From a broader cultural perspective, the situation throws into sharp relief the challenges of inherited roles in the modern age. The monarchy has always thrived on mystery and tradition, on stories passed down through generations and accepted as truth. But we live in an age of scientific certainty, digital transparency, and public skepticism. The idea that a royal figure could, with the help of a few swabs and a lab test, dismantle centuries of assumed lineage speaks to the tension between old institutions and new realities. DNA doesn't care for titles, pomp, or narrative. It tells its own story, often without mercy. The ramifications of this break also touch upon the remaining royal figures. For King Charles, the implications are not just paternal, but sovereign. As king, he symbolizes continuity and stability. To be publicly rejected by a son, especially under such circumstances, undermines that image. It calls into question not just familial dynamics, but moral and symbolic leadership. For Prince William, the situation introduces a complex layer of fraternal distance. The already visible rift between the brothers could widen further, especially if William perceives Harry's actions as damaging to the institution that William is bound to uphold. For the public, the reaction is likely to be split. Some will sympathize with Harry, seeing him as a man reclaiming his truth and his autonomy. Others will view the situation as unnecessarily destructive, a personal revelation turned into a public spectacle. But whatever one's stance, it is impossible to deny that this moment represents a turning point. Even though no official confirmation has been released from Buckingham Palace regarding the DNA results, Harry's complete severance from King Charles suggests that the emotional truth, at least for him, is settled. That emotional truth, regardless of biological facts, may be the most powerful force at play here. When a child no longer recognizes a parent as family, whether due to betrayal or biological misalignment, the wound is deep. And when that child is a prince, the consequences reverberate far beyond the walls of any palace. The path forward for Prince Harry is now entirely his own. Freed from royal obligation and now seemingly unbound by biological connection, he exists in a space few can truly comprehend. A man born into unimaginable privilege and constraint, now attempting to craft an identity rooted in authenticity rather than ancestry. The freedom may be liberating, but the cost is profound. Even as the world digests this information, the nature of truth and family will remain at the center of the conversation. Prince Harry's decision to cut ties may ultimately be viewed as an act of defiance, or one of self-preservation. It may be seen as a final break from a painful past, or the beginning of an entirely new chapter, shaped not by royalty, but by raw humanity. This revelation, and Harry's subsequent actions, force us to ask larger questions about loyalty, lineage, and the power of truth. It challenges us to consider whether blood alone is what binds a family, or whether honesty, love, and shared history matter more. For Prince Harry, the answer appears to be clear, and in choosing that answer, he has reshaped not only his own life, but the very story of the monarchy from which he emerged. With Prince Harry's decisive break from King Charles, a new reality unfolds, one that redefines his public and private identity entirely. As the dust begins to settle, attention naturally shifts to the intricate layers that underlie such a monumental choice. While the headlines focus on the rupture and its shocking cause, what lies beneath is an even more complex reckoning: the dismantling of roles, expectations, and an identity forged from birth that is no longer viable. This revelation has not only removed Harry from the royal narrative, but has effectively placed him outside of a system that once defined every detail of his existence. His life, once dictated by centuries-old protocols and obligations, is now no longer beholden to lineage or the crown. He's not just stepping away from royal duties, he's severing the idea that he ever truly belonged in the first place. This changes the emotional calculus in a significant way. Before, Harry's choices were seen as rebellion within the system. Now they are acts of detachment from a system he may never have been authentically part of. It also demands a reevaluation of how identity is shaped by institutions. For someone raised under the constant weight of duty, heritage, and history, discovering a fundamental break in that heritage is akin to having the floor removed beneath one's feet. Everything, from education to decorum to even love and marriage, was filtered through the lens of royalty. With this tie cut, it is not just a personal relationship that is lost. It is the very scaffolding of who he was told he is. For Harry's children, this moment becomes more than a family secret. It becomes a generational turning point. Their identities will now be formed in a context free from the rigid expectations that once loomed over their father. Whether or not they grow up with royal titles, their lives will be shaped less by ceremony and more by the intentional choices their parents make. They are now firmly grounded in the world their father has chosen to build, one that values transparency, emotional well-being, and individuality over bloodline and appearance. The implications also echo beyond palace walls. The global fascination with royal life has always centered on the tension between its symbolic power and its personal cost. With this development, the cost has never been clearer. The revelation strips away the mythos and reveals a raw truth that even those born into castles and crowned legacies are not immune to the same emotional fractures and identity crises as anyone else. In some ways, this has made Harry more relatable than ever, but in others it has separated him from the only world he once knew. Without lineage as a tether, Harry's position in history is now being rewritten, not by palace scribes or constitutional scholars, but by his own choices. He is no longer a royal figure trying to redefine the monarchy. He is a man, unbound, in search of a new story. And that, perhaps, is the most powerful shift of all. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Harry cutting ties after shocking DNA reveal? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.